Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
From the bottom of my pencil case, I love you in the songs I write and sing. Love you because...
Hello, good evening. Now, things you didn't get in Prime Minister's questions today: a fistfight, fireworks, flashman, funny jokes, or the sound of Jeremy Corbyn falling flat on his face. What you did get was a more nuanced drama. The new boy trying to do it his way, injecting a gentler tone and with a populist twist. It was a big day for Corbyn and for the Commons, and we wanted to know just how it would go down with the public and with professional pundits. So we gathered a crowd of them, 18 members of the public with different political views and 4 commentators. Now, to start, before PMQs commenced, I asked our audience to each give me one word that for them encapsulates their thoughts about Jeremy Corbyn.
Unelectable.
Idealistic.
Socialist.
A mongrel dog. Refreshing.
A man of integrity.
Authentic.
Principled.
Disconcerting.
Genuine.
Chaotic.
Divisive.
Authentic.
Radical.
Thought-provoking.
Conviction.
Honest.
Mad.
How many of you would say, from what you've seen, Jeremy Corbyn is likeable? Likeable. So he scores pretty highly in this. How many of you actually think he's dislikable, actually don't like him? Okay, but most of you are kind of willing to give him the kind of likability factor. If I rephrase that and say, how many of you think he's prime ministerial, how does that? Anybody? No?
What do you mean by prime ministerial?
Well, yeah, I'm letting you decide. You decide. Do you think he's prime ministerial? Can you imagine him, for example?
Absolutely not.
I think
No, you're struggling on that.
See, I can, but then I would see prime ministerial as something different to what other people in this room do. I mean, prime ministerial seems to me to be suited and booted and playing the game and spinning the stuff and reading what you've been told to read and all. You know, why is he not prime? Goodness me, look at the prime ministers in our history. Why is he not prime ministerial?
I think it'd be embarrassing to have him represent Britain with other countries.
Let's watch Prime Minister's questions. So sit back, enjoy the show, think of things that you notice, you like, you don't like, and we'll get your comments afterwards. Okay, thanks.
Jeremy Corbyn!
I thought my first Prime Minister's question time, I'd do it in a slightly different way, and I'm sure the Prime Minister's going to absolutely welcome this, as he welcomed this idea in 2005. But something seems to have happened to his memory during that period. And so I sent out an email to thousands of people and asked them what questions they would like to put to the Prime Minister. And I received 40,000 replies. Now, there isn't time to ask 40,000 questions today, and our rules limit us to 6. And so I would like to start with the first one, which is about housing. 2,500 people emailed me about the housing crisis in this country. And I asked one from a woman called Marie, who says, what does the government intend to do about the chronic lack of affordable housing and the extortionate rents charged by some private sector landlords in this country?
If we are able to change Prime Minister's questions and to make it a more genuine exercise in asking questions and answering questions, no one would be more delighted than me.
I had more than 1,000 questions on tax credits. Paul, for example, says this very heartfelt question: why is the government taking tax credits away from families? I ask a question from Claire, who says this: how is changing the thresholds of entitlement for tax credits going to help hard-working people or families? I've got a question from Stephen, who works for a housing association.
Well, What did we think? Initial reactions, folks. Come on, who wants to give an initial reaction? Yes, at the back.
He hasn't convinced me to vote for him, but actually was a very interesting way of doing question time. And I heard he was asking questions, and I heard 30,000, 40,000 had come in. I thought, how's he going to manage that? But actually, I thought it was really interesting.
He comes in and he says that PMQs is going to be different. And what does he do? He comes out with a gimmick where he presents questions that he's polled from the public. And all he does is sound like, I think, a lame radio talk show host.
I actually think the approach was quite commendable. However, it doesn't appear to give much pressure on the government. It means that it seems as though David Cameron has a free run to sort of sell what he's done over the past 5 years.
How many of you liked the kind of people's questions device? How many of you thought that was good? Wow, overwhelming. And so not even all the not all of you are Corbyn supporters. Josie, this is meant to be political theatre. You're in the world of theatre.
I am.
Did it lose some of its theatricality as a result of this kind of new, more friendly PMQ?
Well, look, I think I need to start by defending theatre. I mean, what Corbyn has said is that he wants it to be less theatrical and less a theatre.
Many told me that they thought Prime Minister's question time was too theatrical, that Parliament was out of touch and too theatrical, and they wanted things done differently, but above all, they wanted their voice heard.
All we saw was a different kind of theatre. He was standing there as a tribune of the people, putting these questions forward. You know, I can just hear the media scurrying to try and find Marie and, you know, everyone else. And it seems to me that he was more formal in a way, and there was something about an act of honouring that I am standing here, and perhaps defensively, holding these people in front of me. So I'm not speaking from my own perspective, I'm speaking from the perspective of those who have communicated with me. There's something that's both defensive and appealing about that, and that to pretend that's not a technique, to go that's natural, that's real, that's not theatrical, is a kind of lie, I think.
OK, let's get the political writers' comments here. Dan, you are so not a fan of Jeremy Corbyn. Sorry? Jeremy Corbyn was unlikely to disappoint you, I think. But what did you think of his performance?
I actually thought technically it was actually quite a composed performance from him. I mean, obviously, it must have been an incredible sort of ordeal, if you like, his first appearance. And I thought technically he actually did quite well. I thought I was quite, sort of, if you like, pleasantly surprised by that. But I know there's been a lot of talk about the excessive theatrics of Prime Minister's questions and the Yabu sucks nature of politics. But that is a forum whereby the leader of the opposition has to try and hold the government of the day to account. And the format he used just completely failed to do that.
So, Owen, who owned PMQs today?
Well, inevitably, I think, you know, everyone was watching Prime Minister's questions, and I'm sure probably it's got its biggest ever audience, probably its entire history, was precisely because it was Jeremy Corbyn. He was trying to put issues on the agenda. What happened was you had this huge explosion of grassroots enthusiasm, because at the moment across the Western world you have disillusionment with political elites, and it just latched on to his leadership campaign. And so the format represents that. It's the fact that it was this grassroots upsurge, and he's therefore crowdsourcing it because he sees himself as somebody who rode a wave, an unexpected wave no one could have predicted. It wasn't him putting policies on the agenda as he expected, and therefore it's to be the mouthpiece of that grassroots kind of movement. The challenge he has, though, and I do agree with this, he can't do that every week, because you do need to have sustained questioning. I'd say come out of a comfort zone, yes, talk about issues which affect people at the bottom of society, people who don't have a voice in politics, but also go outside that comfort zone and pick issues you wouldn't expect him to take, particularly on issues, I gave examples, home ownership or self-employed people. He's got to surprise.
So, Isabel, who won?
Well, I think Jeremy Corbyn did make quite an impressive start, actually, in the way that he set the tone in the chamber, so that it still felt passionate, but it felt like a forum for scrutiny in a way that it doesn't always. But as the others have said, both on the panel and in the group, actually what he could have done better would have been grouping the questions, so picking one question from one person and then developing it, because people are obviously very concerned about housing, but to help express their concerns in the House of Commons as leader of the opposition, as someone who the electorate pays to be better informed than most voters, what he could have done was pick up that question about social housing funding and then go through the detailed problems with it to wrong foot Cameron.
How do you think Cameron played it?
Well, I think he rose to the challenge, although I have to say the whole session felt a bit like we were in January and people were just enacting their New Year's resolutions, people sort of going to the gym, and then by February they've kind of changed their mind and they're back on the sofa.
Obviously, it's going to get a bit of getting.
I don't think Jeremy Corbyn managed to allay fears about his own policies, particularly on national security, and you saw that Tory backbenchers were respectfully highlighting that in their questions about Trident, about security, about ISIL.
There was an advantage for Jeremy Corbyn in how he conducted PMQs. The one advantage, which was this: he prevented David Cameron from attacking him.
Let's go back to the other half of the room, because I want to hear your comments. You've heard what these guys think. What was the most memorable line from PMQs? Anybody?
I don't think there were, because he was. It was more grown up.
Corbyn's best line so far has been the one, poverty deniers, which unfortunately didn't use today, but he used the other day, and that's a marvellous one.
I think he's sort of held off. I mean, he's used words in the past, like someone recited just now, poverty deniers. I'm surprised he didn't go in for that. I think a lot, as I said, a lot of it, he missed chances to strike blows, I think, in this first time.
I don't think we've learned a huge amount from it. I think it was a fairly safe Prime Minister's questions.
At the back, what's your kind of impression of Mr. Corbyn's first PMQs?
Uninspiring.
Safe.
Wet.
Light.
Dignified.
Disciplined.
Bland.
Gravitas.
Inconsequential.
Flat.
Subdued.
Logid.
Inclusive.
Measured.
Refreshing.
Pacifist.
Inspiring.
Lacking.
Principled.
Transient.
Invisible.
The views of our panel. Well, as you heard there, all day, of course, journalists have been trying to track down the people who had submitted the questions used by Jeremy Corbyn. There have been some false leads, several Maries, but we have found one.
I ask a question from Claire, who says this: how is changing the thresholds of entitlement for tax credits going to help hard-working people or families?
That was the question of Claire Carey, who joins us. Claire, good evening to you. I mean, did you know that was coming?
I didn't know. I wasn't aware of it until my parents messaged me and asked me if I'd submitted a question. So then I found the programme and watched it and realised, yes, that was mine.
And what did you think when you saw him ask your question? Were you proud, nervous?
I was pleased, actually, because I have submitted similar questions, for other programmes. I've never been lucky enough to be chosen, and I think it's more in the public eye at the moment, tax credits. So possibly that's why it was chosen.
Okay, expand on your question now, Claire. What was in your mind when you asked that question? Why did you ask that particular question about tax credits?
Okay. My family and I do claim tax credits. We both work, my husband and I, and we do have children. We have 5 children. So we actually benefit from the tax credit system, as do many other hard-working families. By decreasing the thresholds is going to obviously decrease our award payment, and there seems to be a shift in people's opinions of tax credits, whereas it is an in-work benefit for people who are obviously working, they're striving hard. Now, it used to be a rebate through your tax payments, and now it's shifted, and the government have kind of underhand, as far as I'm concerned, through the media, people's perceptions of it have changed, and it's seen as people are only claiming it and they don't necessarily deserve it, or
Claire,
they should just be working harder, basically.
Claire, just tell me, did you feel that David Cameron answered the question? Because you made the point very well now, but did Cameron answer it?
No, not at all.
I
think he gave a well-rehearsed response to whenever anybody asked questions about the tax credits. The fact remains he wants to decrease them. He wants to increase people's work and decrease. He wants to roll back the state, basically. I don't think he answered the question at all. He doesn't seem to be aware that a large proportion of the families claiming this benefit are in work and are already striving hard and are subject to public service 1% pay rises, so there's only so far they can strive harder.
Claire, thanks very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Well, our political editor, Allegra Stratton, is here to take stock. What is it, day 4?
Day 4, and day 4 today he gets control. It was a pretty confident performance, I thought. A breath of fresh air. I've seen loads and loads of these things. He stood up, and David Cameron had to resist being flashman, did he not? And I thought also David Cameron played his part quite well. But the problem is, at the end, we understand David Cameron turned to George Osborne and said, well, that was a lot less stressful. Then Jeremy Corbyn will know that his job is to hold the Prime Minister to account. He didn't do that. Now, this evening, Jeremy Corbyn's team are saying that the tone was good today, but they know that in the fullness of time, the tactics can't last.
Yeah, you can't keep on just asking other people's
but
questions.
they're pretty pleased.
Right. There have been rumours, questions
gossip.
swirling around, gossip, blogs suggesting there may be some defections coming from ultras, the Blairites, to the Tories.
My feeling about the truth of this is that what the Conservatives are right now trying to do is to persuade senior figures on the centre-left in the establishment to come over to them, to run institutions, inquiries, commissions, maybe even museums, that they want to create the sense that they are the centre ground, the big, big tent. They don't want these people to become Tories. So that's the project they are actively working on right now. The people running that process have told me that what they do not expect is any defections of sitting MPs. These Labour MPs, for whatever people out there say, they are very tribal, they've been Labour forever and ever. It would be a very, very difficult thing for them to do. But also, they're waiting to see what happens with the Jeremy Corbyn project. If they leave now, they might have left too soon. But what I don't rule out, and this is more me reading between lines than anything anyone said, is that I think in the fullness of time, if Jeremy Corbyn did last, you could have Labour MPs who think this isn't the party for me. They stand down, and then they might pop up maybe sometime later, a year less, doing something for the Tories. That's a long way away.
Thanks.
I wrote this song for you, Jennifer, Alison, Philip, Sue, Deborah, Annabelle, too. Jennifer, Alison, Philip, Sue.